Welcome to MKTV, I'm Michael K, and today we're going to be installing and reviewing the Tein Street Basis Z suspension. No, we're not going to be doing this ourselves, bud. We've got Jamacor to help us with that. All right, let's talk a little bit about what I wanted from the suspension. Now, if you remember seeing the suspension before, it had a pretty big wheel gap between the tire and the fender. And my goal for this entire project was just to close that gap. I just wanted it to be a little cleaner, a little racier. I don't need it to be super slammed. I don't need the wheels to tuck into the fenders. I just wanted to have clean fitment, and that's it. So in looking for different suspension fitments, I found Fitment Industries, as I've mentioned before on this channel, to be the easiest place to get the fitment you're looking for, and I picked out an Acura that I saw in their gallery to have the fitment that exactly matches what I had in my mind. I also wanted to keep in mind the budget for this build, so I wanted suspension that was semi-affordable, and that led me to the Tein Street Basis Z or the Street Advance Z. So both of these suspensions do the same thing. The only difference though on the Advance is that you get damper adjustment. So if you have damping adjustments for your suspension, you can set how stiff and how soft the suspension is when it hits a bump. So the upward travel of the suspension, you have the ability to adjust that. There's a couple of ways to adjust your damping if you do go that route. There's a knob that's on the bottom of the shock that you can adjust, or you can purchase a kit that allows you to electronically control the damping from inside your vehicle. So this kit is called the Edfc Active Electronic Damping Control. So it basically allows you to adjust damping on the fly while you're in the driver's seat. So you can take your car out, drive it around, see how it reacts, and then adjust your damping both front and rear. This is actually a pretty cool feature, and the cost to upgrade your suspension is about $100, and you can control the damping. If you want that Edfc Active controller, you can buy that. It's around $400 to $500 online. But for this build, I went with the Street Basis Z, which is just a basic upgrade over stock. It gives you height adjustment and a slightly better feel. The suspension is just a little bit stiffer. It feels better to drive around than the stock suspension. That stock suspension is really loosey-goosey. It just doesn't feel like you're connected to the road. You kind of float around. So I prefer this little upgrade over no upgrade. But if you have the money and you have the budget, I would go with the Street Advanced system so that you can adjust your damping. All right, without further ado, let's unbox these things and see how they look on the car. All right, without getting too much into the weeds on this, When you replace the suspension and lower the front end of an Acura RSX, the tie rods are not long enough and they shift a little bit up, which gives you a little bit of toe in. So it is strongly recommended to get an alignment, even though after the alignment, you're still gonna have a little bit of toe in. There are ways to fix this. You can Google it online. You get either longer or shorter end links. I'm not really sure because I chose to keep the stock ones because the toe really wasn't a big deal. I didn't slam the car all the way to the ground, so my toe was okay. But after this, you've also noticed that in the rear, you've got a little bit of camber. It's a little more than stock camber because as you drop the car, the wheels start to point in on the top. So you've got a little bit of camber on the rear. You're gonna have to deal with that. I actually appreciate just a tiny bit of camber. It looks a little more racy than a stock wheel that's just straight up and down. So I like the way that it came out. I think it looks great. We were able to get rid of all of the tire gap that we had. And these particular wheels with a 30 mil offset, we actually did have to roll the fenders to make sure it wasn't rubbing. And then the back, actually I had to raise up just a little bit after we were done because the back left did rub when we were going through dips and making right-hand turns. So there is a lot of adjustment. It is very easy to adjust after the fact. I had Jamacor put the suspension on, but after that, adjusting them is so easy. You use the 2 wrenches that the Tein suspension comes with. You turn the one knob up to bring it up, down to bring it down. It is very, very simple. That's the nice thing about having adjustable coilovers is that if it is too low, you can just bring it up a little bit. Now you're gonna get a different look if you bring it too high, but I think this is a wonderful kit for the money. They cost around $700 to $800 depending on where you buy them. I highly recommend getting the Street Bases Z because you have the adjustable height and you've got a ride that doesn't feel too stiff. You're not on the highway just bouncing around like crazy. It actually feels like a street suspension. So as long as you're not going out and racing your car on the track, I think this suspension works really well. It's soft enough to where you don't have to worry about all those bumps, but it's also stiffer than your stock suspension, so it feels like a good ride. It feels like you're connected to the road. Now there are a couple of cons with lowering your car, and those are pretty obvious. I mean, the car is much lower, so when you go out of driveways or you go through dips in the road, you're gonna have to take them at an angle because, well, you're gonna rip your bumper off. And for this particular build, it has an aftermarket bumper on it that sticks way out. It's very easy to clip that on everything. And we actually did, in filming this video, we had to go get gas, and coming out of the driveway of the gas station, we clipped the front bumper and it does have small cracking in it. So we'll have to get that fixed before we get the car painted. So I wasn't too worried about it, but it's something you really need to keep in mind because not everybody really likes driving a lowered car. They like looking at a lowered car, but they don't like driving it. Aside from that, it does make it a little bit harder to get a jack under. So if you don't have a low profile jack, that's also something you should think about. But aside from those 2 things, there's really not any negatives that I can think of. The ride's great, the height is adjustable, and it's better than stock, that's for sure. All right guys, I'll have links in the description for both of those suspensions, the Street Basis, which is the one I used, and the Street Advance, the one that has the damping control, so that you can go to either one of those and pick that out for your RSX. And honestly, that's it guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. I'm out.